The objectives of this lesson are to closely read and understand a text to its fullest extent, to learn annotative techniques that provide visual guidelines in understanding, to close read on-level texts as a class, to learn new vocabulary embedded throughout texts with context clues, to understand how works that are seemingly outdated are relevant to everyday life, and to understand how references from Hamlet can be used in modern media and literature in real-life connections, and students will be able to go forward and read Hamlet with an understanding of how it applies to them specifically in real-world situations. All right, guys, so as we move into talking about Hamlet, the tragedy of Hamlet is written by Shakespeare. I wanted to ask you a question before we begin. And that question is, have you ever read anything in class or done anything in any class that you felt like didn't relate to you at all?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, what about in English? Like whenever you're reading stories, you're not really sure why you're reading them or what they have to do with you in general?
Yes.
Yeah. How much do you remember of those stories?
Barely
Barely at all. On the flip side, I know a lot of you in here like to read. Have you ever read something that really touched you, and that's maybe one of your favorite books? And how much do you remember of that story? Everything. You could probably say every detail. And the point is that we remember things that touch us, or remember things that have to do with things that are directly relatable to us. And so, before we start reading Hamlet, I want to talk about why Hamlet is relevant, or may not be relevant to you. So, Seth, would you pass out the highlighters in this blue box up here? And if you would take one of these and pass them back, I would greatly appreciate it. Now, what I'm passing out to you at this moment is a lecture by a man named William Hazlitt. Has anyone ever heard of William Hazlitt? No? You may have heard me talk about him before. William Hazlitt is a professor that studies, or does research on the Elizabethan age, including Shakespearean works. And not only does he talk about the works themselves, but he speaks about the relevance of these works in our lives as students and as human beings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this lecture up on the document reader, and I'm going to read it to you as well, and then I'll give you some examples of what I want you to do. Before we read, I want you to look at the bottom in the bold. It's a little bit bigger than the rest of the writing. It says, starts with the word quote. And it says, quote at least 3 phrases from Hazlitt's lecture that you personally identify with. Now, what I want you to do is take your highlighter, and as we read, I want you to highlight 3 separate quotes, pieces of sentences, something that you feel like resonates with you personally. Whether it is something that you've gone through, something you've experienced yourself, something that you've been in contact with but maybe not personally experienced, anything like that. At the bottom, underneath those instructions, there are 3 direct quotes from Hamlet, the actual play itself. What I want you to do is I want you to choose one of those quotes that you feel relates to you the most. And I'll read them and kind of explain them to you in context before we move on. But first, what I want to do is I want to read this lecture, and it is titled, Why Read Hamlet? And this section of the lecture is called, How is Hamlet Relevant to You? Hamlet is a name. His speeches and sayings, but the idle coinage of the poet's brain. What then, are they not real? They are as real as our own thoughts. Their reality is in the reader's mind. It is we who are Hamlet. This play has a prophetic truth, which is above that of history. Whoever has become thoughtful and melancholy throughout his own mishaps or those of others, whoever has borne about him the clouded brow of reflection and thought to himself, too much is the sun, whoever has seen the golden lamp of day dimmed by envious mists, rising in his own breast, and could find in the world before him only a dull blank, with nothing left remarkable in it. Whoever has known the pangs of despised love, the insolences of office, or the spurns which patient merit of the unworthy takes. He who has felt his mind sink within him, and sadness cling to his heart like a malady, who has had his hopes blighted and his youth staggered by the apparitions of strange things, who cannot well be at ease while he sees evil hovering near him like a specter, whose powers of action have been eaten up by thought, he to whom the universe seems infinite and himself nothing, whose bitterness of soul makes him careless of consequences, and who goes to a play at his best resources to shove off, to a second remove the evils of life by a mock representation of them. This is the true Hamlet. We have been so used to this tragedy that we hardly know how to criticize it any more than we should know how to describe our own faces. But we must make such observations as we can. It is one of Shakespeare's plays that we think of the oftenest because it abounds most in striking reflections on human life, and because of the distress of Hamlet are transferred by the turn of his mind to the general account of humanity. Whatever happens to him we apply to ourselves, because what applies to himself as a means of general reasoning. He is a great moralizer, and what makes him worth attending to is that he moralizes his own feelings and his own experience. He is not a commonplace pedant. If King Lear is distinguished by the greatest depths of passion, Hamlet is the most remarkable for the ingenuity, originality, and unstudied development of character, of human character. So Hamlet delves deepest within to the reaches of our soul that we don't necessarily want to go into, and that is why it has outlasted many other plays of the ages. At the bottom there are 3 quotes from Hamlet. You'll see 2 are from Hamlet himself, and 1 is from Queen Gertrude, which is Hamlet's mother. And the first one from Hamlet says, "Frailty, thy name is woman. A little month ere those shoes were old with which she followed my poor father's body, like Niobe all tears, why she, even she, O God, a beast that wants discourse of reason would have mourned longer." And this is where Hamlet is saying that women can't be trusted, that women are frail, that his father hasn't even been dead a month, and his mother's already married someone else, and that's upset him greatly, if you can imagine being in those shoes. So he says, "Frailty, thy name is woman." Basically, women can't be trusted. I can't believe my mother wasn't stronger. Things like that. So if you feel like that's something that may apply to you, you can highlight that one. The second one is, to be or not to be. That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing them, to die, to sleep no more. Does anyone know what that means, to be or not to be? He's contemplating suicide. Yes, in the most basic form. To be or not to be, to live or to die. Should I go through this world and suffer the slings and the arrows of these outrageous fortunes, to take arms against these seas of troubles, or should I just die, oppose them, and sleep no more? So if you feel like that's something that resonates within you, you could highlight that one. And the third one is Gertrude, Queen Gertrude at a funeral. She says, "Sweets to the sweet, farewell," and she throws flowers on the grave. "I hope thou shouldst been my Hamlet's wife. I thought thy bride bed to have decked, sweet maid, and not have strewed thy grave." So in this one we see the mourning of the loss of another human life. So in our first one we have strife against possibly the opposite sex, maybe relationship troubles. And the second one is a conflict within ourselves, contemplation against the meaning of life. And the third one is deals with the mourning or the passing of another life. So of the 3, choose the one that you think most applies to you and highlight that. So for example, what I'm going to do on the document reader is show you something that I would do in relevance to me in Hazlitt's lecture. So here he starts to talk about the things that Hamlet deals with. Whoever is born about him the clouded brow of reflection, whoever's been lost in thought, whenever you're daydreaming, too much is the sun, whenever you feel like you can't go outside because it's almost too much. Find the world a dull blank with nothing left remarkable in it. The pangs of despised love, the insolences of office, or the spurn which merit the unworthy takes. I think that this one would be me, or one that I would definitely deal with. You don't have to use this one, but this is one that I would highlight. He who has felt his mind sink within him, and sadness cling to his heart like a malady. And you know, melancholy, somewhere up here at the top, melancholy means to be sad. Whoever has been thoughtful and melancholy, so thoughtfulness, sadness, those types of feelings. So I want you to find 3 different things in the lecture and then one of the quotes from Hamlet. And if you turn your paper over, there is a section for quotes, and there's a section for reflection. What I want you to do is I want you to identify the 3 quotes that you've chosen. I want you to pick 2 from the lecture and 1 directly from Hamlet. I want you to identify them in the quote section.
So write up the whole quote?
You don't have to write the whole quote, you just need to identify it. So you know maybe the start and the end point. And that way when you write a full reflection, you can go back and find it a little bit more easily. So take a few seconds to do that. 2 from the lecture, and you can use 1 from the actual play. Yeah. So once you've identified your 3 quotes, we're going to use Jane Schaefer's technique of writing. What I want you to do is take each quote and write 2 of your own ideas of reflection for each quote. So 3 times 2 is 6. So you should have 6 sentences at least. There should be 2 points of reflection for each quote that you choose. And a reflection you can write in first person. It can be anything that you think about how this quote relates to you, why it rings so true to you, whether that's from your own experience or maybe something that you've seen someone else experience. There are a lot of other qualities in Hamlet that Hazlitt does not touch on in this section, such as revenge, the turning of the mind, asking ourselves if we really are crazy or if we just think we are. Alright, so I'm going to give you a couple more minutes to kind of gather your thoughts, get out everything that you want to get out. It doesn't need to be perfect now. I just kind of want you to be able to see your ideas on paper so that you can come back to them in just a second. Okay, so you should have somewhere in the range of about 3 quotes up here and then 3 reflections that are about 2 sentences apiece. Does anyone want to share one quote that they felt like really, really resonated with them from this lecture? Sydney?
Whose powers of action have been eaten up by thought, and then my reflection was there have been times when I've become lost in thought and trapped their powers because other people's actions have left me helpless in fixing any of the situations.
Absolutely. Anyone who's ever been lost in their own thoughts, I know that you've experienced that, where you've got something that's so heavy on your mind that you can't focus on anything else that's going on around you, even if it is important. Seth?
I chose the evils of life by a mock representation of them, and my reflection was, I felt like this many times in life where it feels like everything is so bad and it can never change. But as a person, I deal with my issues much like many other funny people by just making fun of them and trying to find a way to get over them.
Right.
And laughter can hide many things.
So coping with laughter, but sometimes that can hide a lot of things that are underneath the surface. Definitely. Tony?
Whose bitterness of soul makes him careless of consequence. Like,
That's a good
like
that's
if
a good one.
If you're bitter and you feel like, since since your heart is like saddened and like if you're depressed and you feel like you have nothing to lose, then you might as well do whatever.
Right. Whenever you feel like you've gone so far past the point and like nothing else matters, you don't care so much about your actions anymore, and you could do really careless things. Yeah. One more, Kenji.
I interpreted the whose power of action have been eaten up, I thought, a little bit differently.
Yeah, sure.
The way I saw it was as when you want to take action, but your own thoughts of the consequences of your action and the possibility of failure hinder you from doing that and doing what needs to be done.
Definitely. So kind of in that overthinking stage where you wonder too much if your actions are going to affect other people too much or maybe cause you to fail, and that scares you into not moving. Absolutely, definitely. Those are great thoughts. I mean, and this is all exactly what Hazlitt was talking about whenever he said this is why young people need to read this literature, because young people deal with this stuff on a daily basis. So if you flip your paper over again, one more time, what you're going to do is create a thesis debate. So there is one big bubble, okay? And it says, why are we reading Shakespeare's work? It's so old. But keeping your reflections in mind, determine if Hamlet should continue to be read in today's classrooms. And I want you to develop a thesis statement that assesses the relevance or the irrelevance of Hamlet to modern young readers. And your thesis statement should be one sentence in length, no longer than one sentence, but you should be prepared to defend it. So I want you to go ahead and write this. You may start your thesis sentence with Hamlet should be read in the classroom because, or Hamlet should not be read in the classroom because. There are no right or wrong answers. So if you feel like we should not read this, I want you to tell me about it. Tell me why. And give me some backup. You can use your reflections, your own personal thoughts, things of the like. Or you might say, we shouldn't read Hamlet because I don't like Shakespeare, because I can't understand it. That's a valid point. All right, now while you continue to form those thoughts, let me just say, we're going to open the floor for discussion. However, if you come across some idea that you don't necessarily believe with very strongly, control yourself, please. But I do want to hear what you have to say. Does anyone want to present their thesis debates first? Megan, let's hear what you got.
I said, yes, Hamlet should be read in the classroom because the issues brought forth in Hamlet still resonate in us young people today. And it's scary, but also comforting to know that it's almost always been this way.
Very good. So we should read this because we still deal with it. It is a scary thing to talk about, but it is comforting that people in Shakespeare's time were dealing with the same issues. Yes, does anyone have any comment on Megan's thesis?
My comment would bring out more of my thesis.
Okay, we'll come back to you just a second, Maddie. But Seth, tell us, so your thesis debate kind of conflicts Megan's?
Yeah, I actually said that Hamlet should not be read in the classroom because it although it may have stuff to do with our lives right now, and it's too archaic to be understood and useful by the average high school student. Like,
okay, so it's too archaic to be used by the average high school student. What do you suggest that we do instead?
I mean, there's tons of other books written by like modern day books that people actually enjoy reading, that actually hit a lot of the same points and are way more easy to understand and digest.
So we've got some contemporary books that deal with the same thing. Does anybody have a rebuttal? Kenji?
Actually, I wanted to add on to that.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So, I actually, in this case, agree with Seth. The thing is, we're in school to be, the whole point of our school system is to be able to empower students and allow all of them to learn and all of them to grow as people. If you have something that not all of the students are going to be able to digest, then you're really not going to be accomplishing the goal of like them actually learning things in the classroom. You're going to have kids that are left behind. However, if you use a more contemporary work, then not only can you hit on the same issues, it's going to be more relatable to them because the characters are going to be talking, they're going to be acting like they would in those situations. They're not going to be going, there aren't going to be any sword fights.
Yeah, we don't see very many sword fights today. Yeah, very good. So I think that that's a great point. We've got these great contemporary books that are out now that deal with real life situations just like you. So, you know, skipping the archaic language, why don't we cut straight to the point? You know, Renee, what would you like to say?
Like I kind of agree to an extent on what Stephanie and you were saying, but you have to think about it. You're at a high school level of education. You know what you're talking about. You should be able to break it down. The archaic language. You should have the common sense enough to break down certain words. Use context clues for everything that you learn to be able to break it down and make sense of it.
So we should use Hamlet as a tool to teach analysis and critical thinking. Izzy?
I agree that it should be continue to be taught in schools, but I feel like it's old, but it's good that it's old, and the language, a lot of people won't know the language. But they need to be taught the language because there are so many other books and like sources that have that language, so it needs to be taught.
Okay, very good. Seth, you want to come back to your...
Yeah, what I think is, whenever you're reading this, like most of the time the teacher's helping you through it. They're giving you context clues, telling you what the words mean, telling you how they talked back then, and you're just jumbling all this information into your head so you can study for the test or maybe hopefully pass it. And then as soon as you leave class, what are you going to do?
Forget it.
You're going to forget it. It just doesn't have anything relatable for us.
Exactly.
So we can't do anything.
That's a great point. I'm going to go to Maddie. She had her hand up first, but then I'll come back to you. Maddie, what is your thesis debate? You had your hand up a while ago.
Yes, I said that Hamlet should be read in today's classroom because it can bring to light problems and how to solve them. Because you know that a story has problems in it, but it also has an ending, and it could be a happy ending or a sad ending. But they're going to learn how to solve the problems in the book. Like, they don't just leave you hanging, oh, did he ever solve his problem? So if you relate to some of the problems in Hamlet, then you could possibly find out how to deal with the problems in the same way that Hamlet dealt with his problems.
Very, very good. So let's keep in mind, though, that this is the tragedy of Hamlet. So we know it does not have a very happy ending. However, I do really like that viewpoint. Problems need solutions, and these old archaic books do offer solutions that are much more relatable than you may think. Hannah?
Well, we complain about like not being able to understand it, but was Shakespeare one that was illiterate?
Shakespeare was the king of slang. At the time, he was the guy that was coming up with all these new ideas that people didn't really want to listen to because they thought that it was too contemporary.
So like we've learned so much from Shakespeare, but we complain about not being able to understand it.
Yeah, actually a lot of our insults come from Shakespeare. Megan?
To add on to Hannah's, it's all of our literary works today have come from somewhere already. So why not start at the source of where they came from instead of finding something, you know, oh, this contemporary work, yeah, it's good and we understand it, but where did it come from? It came from Hamlet and all these other Shakespearean stories because they didn't just come up out of nowhere.
Absolutely. So we have these authors that take illusionary references from larger works and turn them into, they spin them into their own things, but these themes have started a long time ago. These themes that are inside of the human soul have been dealing with us as a population for a long time. So why not start down deep at the beginning? You know, why do we have to go through all of these contemporary texts whenever they're still going to handle the same issues, but handle it the first time? Shannon, you had your hand up.
I'm going to use it from a personal experience.
Sure.
As the quote that Sydney used about when your mind is wrong or off. Because in 8th grade, my mom had broken her leg and she was in the hospital in Shreveport, so we really couldn't visit her. And my mind had gone so far because I missed my mom so much that to the point nothing else really mattered. There's a lot of times when you miss somebody so much that like nobody else matters, that you worry about them so much.
Yeah. So if you're reading a story like Hamlet, you know, and I say in class that this might deal with something that you relate to like that, it might take your mind off of it for a few seconds, or it might help you relate. Madison, what is your thesis debate?
Basing it off of what Maddie said, I said Hamlet shouldn't be read because the emotional state of the student shouldn't be brought into the classroom. Because what if, like, a teacher asks them a question and they speak how they feel about something, and then someone makes fun of them for it after they leave the classroom, like what said. Like, someone makes fun of you. A lot of people, they can cover it up with, like, laughing, making jokes, but some people can't do that. And what if it, like, starts to really get at them, and they start to, like, tear.
Okay, so we have separation of emotion and education, right? Where do we draw the line? Should we talk about this in class? Should we bring up depression? Should we bring up revenge and these feelings? That's the alliance. So where do we draw the line? Should we not read Hamlet because we're drawing the line? Or should we read it because it needs to be talked about? Let's go back to Sydney.
I thought that it should be read in the classroom because some students don't have the chance to talk to their families about these issues and their feelings, and sometimes they just need something to consult to help them feel better.
Yeah.
Know that everything's okay.
Because this is kind of a taboo subject, right? This is a little touchy. We don't necessarily want to talk about how we feel inside, and a lot of students don't have this outlet. Tony?
I agree with the fact that some people like can't go home and talk to their families, or they don't feel safe at home to talk to their families. They feel safe here with maybe one or two teachers, or just you know, just in this environment in general.
Right, and I tell you guys this all the time, that people minimize teenage emotions and teenage feelings, but what you're feeling is absolutely real, and it's really heavy, okay? And these are things that do need to be discussed, which of course I'm kind of putting in my own viewpoint here, my own thesis debate, which I need to stay a little neutral, but you know, some of these things you don't get to talk about. Seth, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna, like, just how Shren was saying, emotions come into play, and it, like I was saying earlier, it's hard to digest text, and you're just not gonna pick up on any of that, whereas if something that's written in art, kind of everyday speech, like stuff like problems at home, you can relate to that immediately. You don't exactly relate all the way with Hamlet trying to do whatever.
Yeah, because we don't know what Hamlet did yet, right?
Yeah.
Because we haven't read it, but yeah, definitely. Is he?
I feel like we need to keep learning about like emotions in the classroom, because it's high school is supposed to teach you about like what comes after, and you have to learn about your emotions there. And sometimes reading something that's older can allow you to connect with it and just explore those emotions without it being necessarily as real as something
Right,
newer.
absolutely. So exploring these emotions in a safe place where nothing may necessarily happen, you know, kind of like trial running these things instead of just having to deal with it immediately and not understanding why what's happening is what's happening. Yes?
To touch on that, you have to think about it. A lot of the things that you touch on, like emotional wise, there are serious issues about it, and if some people don't know about it, and we talk about it, breaking it down, it can help. If, like Tony said, you know, people go home, they don't have anybody to talk to, so coming to school and having somebody to talk to, you can break it down, other people know about it, and maybe they'll actually learn what's going on with other people and take some more responsibility to not be, you know, like so rude or anything and take things out on them, because they don't know what they're going through.
Absolutely. And I love this discussion, but I think that we're kind of running down on time, so I would like to pick this back up tomorrow, sincerely, because I do want to say that you're not alone, and sometimes you feel like you are, and these texts tell you that you're not. You're not the only person that feels these feelings. It's like Megan said, it's kind of comforting to know that the way that I'm feeling right now is not the way that it's not a single incident. It's something that we all deal with. So in closing, I want to ask you to write on your reflection paper one more thing. I want you to write why do you think, now, even if your debate was yes or no, why do you think that Hamlet is going to be relevant for you to read in this classroom, and why? Very specific to you. Whether it was yes or no, why do you think Hamlet will be relevant for you to read?